I've given birth.
Welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie Wimpenny. Thank you for liking and subscribing. This is episode 2 of my interview with Charlotte Gray, an incredible mum who has an amazing birth story. But if you missed episode 1, don't worry, I got you covered. It's right there. Just go click it. Aside from that, let's just do it. Yeah.
Dealing with fear straight away when there's quite a lot of studies on around how having a doula reduces your chance of everything, and not by like 5%. I want to say like 30% or 50%. It reduces, episiotomy rate, reduces cesarean rate, reduces everything. So I was like, cool, I need to get a doula. I will say that she helped me in handling my fear. So the first time I spoke to her, she sort of said, hey, just because I told her about my birth, or like my mum's birth of me, and she sort of went, that was your mother's birth, that's not you.
Yeah, that's not your story.
That's not your story. She's like, it doesn't have to be your story. And then she put me, because I was getting high after that, when that pediatrician guy kind of just freaked me out. Sorry, I was getting high. I was getting high blood pressure whenever I was going to my appointments. And not like crazy high, but high enough that they were a bit like, oh, your blood pressure's high. And I sort of started telling my doula, because I was like, I don't have high blood pressure. I think it's like white coat hypertension. Like I'm getting in there, and I don't know what else. I'm just afraid that they're going to start telling me all these bad things. So my blood pressure would go up. It's what it's called.
What? White coat hypertension, as in you don't want to be around the medical.
It's when you go, it's when you go into doctor's appointments. Because what would happen was I'd get in there initially, and it would be quite high, and then after a couple, depending on who it was, and when I started to feel a bit more relaxed, they go, oh, we're going to do it again. And they do it again, and it would go down quite a lot. And then I had, a blood pressure thing at home, and at home it was always great. So it didn't really make sense. And I did have some of them say to me, you've got a bit of white coat hypertension, don't you? And I sort of went, yeah, probably. But my doula, on telling her this, she put me onto hypnobirthing, which was a fantastic tool for me. Hypnobirthing has a lot of relaxation involved. So they have this thing called a rainbow relaxation, and they have positive birth affirmations. And there was a book as well. And so I really got into the hypnobirthing because I found it really helped me to relax and to focus on, breathing and everything. And when I was going to appointments, because I was high risk, I had a lot of appointments, like monthly ones. I would always listen to my positive birth affirmations, before and after, and or listen to rainbow relaxation just to keep the negative out, I guess, if that's the right way to say it, but just to keep myself in that to try and keep myself in that positive mindset. And I would also do yoga. I get up early before I had to go to work, which at first of all I was like, oh really, like do I have to get up earlier, because I was so tired all the time, like sleeping. Sleep is like gold when you're pregnant. It's like, I need my sleep, don't mess with it. But I found, if I didn't get up and do yoga, I would pay for it, because my hips would start to get a bit sore after a couple of days, because I work in an office and, I catch the train and everything else. So yoga, again, a great relaxation. I'd do that, like gentle kind of yoga, and then I'd lay there at the end and just kind of zone out and just relax and, think about my baby, or kind of like talking to my baby and imagining giving birth and imagining just, oh, the baby's here, like just just visualizing that. So that was a big, that was basically it. It was literally me. Like I would lay there, and then I just imagine, I wasn't doing it, but I was imagining just reaching down and just lifting my baby up and being like, oh, he's here, like just with a big smile on my face. So I was constantly, I guess, trying to flood myself with positivity around my birth, because otherwise I wasn't really going to get that from cardiologists and obstetricians and all that jazz. So leading up to my birth, I would say I was not afraid. I say I was not afraid. I think I had probably some things like right when it got to go time, like the actual birth. when I talk about my birth story, I'd say maybe there were a couple of, I think maybe it wasn't fear, it was more I didn't know, or I was unsure. In terms of fear, I was excited about giving birth. Like I couldn't wait.
Yeah.
I was just looking forward to it my whole pregnancy. I couldn't wait to meet my baby. I was,
and the hypnobirthing had a lot to do with that?
I think the hypnobirthing had a huge amount to do with it. And I also think that Ina Gaskin, and she has a TED talk on reducing fear in birth. And she kind of goes, look at like we're the only animal that fears giving birth. Like no other animal is there going, oh my gosh, I've got to give birth in 2 months. How am I going to cope? Like, and we've got dogs, and I've seen, growing up on a bit of a farm, like I've seen dogs give birth, and for them, like there's pretty much no sound. They are just laying there, and the next minute they're like, oh, I'm giving birth. Oh, there's a puppy coming out of me. Like when you watch animals give birth, they're probably like the best things to watch give birth, because 9 times out, like probably like 99% of the time, it goes really well for them. Right. They're not worried about it. Like if they've got the right environment, it's nice and secluded, and they feel safe. Like you also see gazelles that can just like stop giving birth because, there's a lion or whatever there. But in terms of, so listening to Ina Gaskin and her kind of going, look, we're afraid of giving birth. It's weird, but humans are afraid, and explaining that it's a bodily function and that your body and your baby kind of know what to do. And our job is to just not let external factors or our mental state get in the way. Because really, if you can just stay relaxed, then your body can do its job and your baby can do its job. Obviously not always, but so sort of changing my mentality around that, and then realizing, some women have orgasmic births, and it's like something doesn't, you've got women.
What is that?
I didn't have one, but okay. If you've got a sliding scale, like if some women are, no joke, having orgasms when they give birth, and other women are telling you it's so painful that they thought they were going to die, it's like, that's a big sliding scale.
Yeah.
So, and you can't say that everyone, I believe everyone's experience is different. And I do believe, obviously people have painful birth, it's a factor, but then obviously there's other people who are having orgasms.
And what do you think is the difference? Like if there is such a massive sliding scale, there has to be something within that is the difference. What is it? Do you is there?
I think it's a lot of things, but I do think that the whole fear, because you think about it, when you're afraid, and this was, I think, another thing that made me realize I couldn't be afraid, because the way Ina Gaskin would explain it, she's kind of like, I'm like using her words, but she would say to you, when you're in labor, the things which make labor go well, so your body's making this oxytocin, and that's what helps you contract. That's the love hormone, so you need to feel comfortable and safe and loved, and your partner's there. You might want cuddles, you might not want to cuddle, you might want to kiss, you don't want to kiss, whatever. But then she would say, when you have the oxytocin, it then releases, I want to say, your brain can release like neuroendorphins, and they're a painkiller. So if you can kind of get them, if you can be in the right state, like oxytocin, and get these neuroendorphins to release, that's nature's painkiller. Like you don't need, it's instant, it's the right amount. It's, if you can get yourself in that state, that's where you want to be. Whereas if you are afraid, you're going to get adrenaline, you're going to get, well, pretty much just adrenaline, and adrenaline is fight or flight. And when you've got adrenaline, you're like going to tense up, and it's the opposite of oxytocin. Like they're the enemies. Like you don't want adrenaline and all that fear and fight or flight. Like you don't want that in birth. You need the opposite. You need, to feel relaxed and feel calm and all that. So I think knowing that, I kind of was like, well, why am I afraid? Research and find out all of what my fears are. What are the chances of things going wrong? What am I doing to try and reduce my risk of things going wrong? Feeling like I did everything I could. I felt like if I did everything I could and then my birth still went kaput, hey, at least I did everything I could, or everything I knew of.
At least.
So I think knowing that,
you tried, everything that you possibly could, and your body actually said, no, I can't do this thing. I need external help.
Yeah. And I think that whole the whole birth affirmations. Like there were a few that were kind of like, you know, I look forward to my birthing day, and, you know, my baby will be the right size for my body, which was a great one for me to say because all my mum's babies were like 9.5 pounds. So I was also thinking, oh, I'm going to have a 9.5 pound baby. But then, you know, saying, you know, my baby will be the right size for my body. I ended up having like a 7-pound baby, but, you know, like those sorts of things, like just getting in your head. Yeah. And trying to remove all those fears that you have rather than just kind of going, oh, I'll just won't think about it, or, oh, I'll just, you know, like I think it's important for me to get rid of fear was to increase my knowledge and to watch videos. And
it's funny, like when you spend time with pregnant women, like you end up spending time with a spectrum of people because we're all different, we're all unique. And I'm always fascinated by pregnant women because you see pregnant women who get it and they understand fear, they understand that they need to, you know, flood their body with oxytocin, and they keep their space in their bubble really really well, I guess, wrapped. And then other women you meet and they haven't even thought about it, like they haven't, maybe it's say they've never had a catalyst or never had a trigger, maybe their mum had an easy natural birth or whatever it is, like they don't even think about it. And I find they're the ones who tend, from my experience, to get a bit more railroaded because they kind of go in a little bit like I had intended on going in, quite
blasé,
and unprepared in a mental state for what's going to happen, and just happy to go with the flow. And I think that's when, like you were saying, like with animals, they want to get in their comfort and their space that makes them feel you know, at peace and in love, so that their body will just do what it does. Then here we go as human beings throwing people into hospital environments with white coats, and
it's lights, and it's clinical, such a sterile.
And you can't help but get that tension. Like I know other people too, like they just go into a doctor's surgery and it's enough to stress them out. Just being in a doctor's, let alone being in a hospital trying to give birth to a baby for the first time in your life.
And you're in a vulnerable position as well, which I think is, you know, it is a vulnerable position. So yeah, I was looking forward to birth. And I think that was the other thing, like I genuinely was not afraid. And I sort of thought, I don't know what birth's going to be like. I'm just going to, you know, I'm doing all these things. I'm drinking the raspberry leaf tea. I'm eating the dates. I did also go off at like 34 weeks. I didn't work any longer because I wanted that time to prepare. And I know not everyone is in that situation that they can do that, and they want to save their maternity leave and use it, you know, for when they've actually got the baby here. But for me, I was like, hey, this is a big,
when it matters, because they think
because they think
after the birth, that's when it matters. When in actual fact, it matters prior to the birth to get your head right, to get your zone right, to help
you
with
do.
The birth,
you got to prepare.
Exactly.
But prepare in the sense, so I had that 6 weeks because he was born right like 39 plus 5, I think I had Hamish. But I had that 6 week, and you know, and they were going, why don't you work till 38 weeks? You know, why don't you go to and I was like, nah, I want to go at 34 because this is my first baby. My life is going to change, and it has changed a lot, as you would know. You know, so what I would say is, if you can, like, don't think that time before you give birth is useless, because it's really not. Like, spending every day just relaxing, doing the things I love to do. You know, we'd go for a walk around the lake, local lake, like nearly every afternoon, just preparing, cooking food, freezing food, like really just taking my time, visiting places that I like to visit, like driving and seeing places that I knew I probably wouldn't go for a while. So I think that was also a really major part, was the fact that I really was setting up. So leading right up just before I gave birth, I think it was about a week before I gave birth, I had an appointment back at RBWH, and I had to go in for an additional appointment because, so my heart didn't change the entire time during my pregnancy. My aorta never changed size at all, which inside I didn't believe it was going to change. But, and I say that because, you know, if it had rapidly increased or something, yeah, I probably would have gone on the beta blockers and I would have maybe started to consider options. But the fact that it didn't change at all, I was very much like, there would be so many women who give birth who have this that you wouldn't even know about. They only knew about it because my mom had issues later on in life. Anyway, so the whole thing with my birth was, they said to me, and I had to go in to correct it, because what they wrote in my booklet was that if birth wasn't imminent after 1 hour of like pushing, that it would be an instrumental delivery. So I said, what I thought we had agreed on was that we would discuss it if after an hour birth wasn't imminent. But I said, I'm not consenting to this happening. But the way it was,
how do you? I will
yeah, and I mean,
consent.
well, it became such a, so because I got home and I was a bit upset, because it was like, I thought it was my last appointment for a while, and then I've gone home and I've seen all this in there, so I had to call them up and go, you know, I don't agree with a few of these things in here. And they went, well, you need to come in and speak to a consultant and sign a declining recommended care a form. And they're like, you know, that way it's all very clear and it's all agreed on by both parties, what's being agreed. So I came in and I brought Fabian with me because I thought I might need a little bit of, I want his support, like going in. And this woman was just an absolute like dragon. Like she said, the first thing she said to us was, you know, we had a woman die who was like, you just see it, or not die. We had a woman whose aorta tore during labor just the other week, you know, and she was on the lower risk end of high risk like you are. And, you know, Fabian, how would you feel if Charlotte died during childbirth and you were left to raise your baby? So that's what she said. That was like the first thing she said. And luckily I kind of thought they might be a bit funny with me, but I wasn't too phased. But Fabian was like, I was nearly crying. He's like, what a terrible, like, he's like, when she said it, he's like, my first response was like, oh my God. But then he's like, then I realized they were trying to play on emotion. Absolutely. So they were trying to use emotional blackmail pretty much to get us to agree to things. And, you know, I nearly asked her, can you tell me more about this woman? You know, what was her age? What was her aorta like? What sort of birth did she have? Because age and everything impacts your, age and everything impacts your aorta. Like as you get older, it can get bigger. But I just thought, I don't even know if what she told me was factual, because she didn't really have much else to tell me about it. Like it was such a vague thing to say. So that wasn't a very pleasant appointment, but I was glad. Well, I say we were glad we had it, even though I don't think the midwives really read it. But there were things, you know, like I declined the continual electronic fetal monitoring, which is where you see women with that big band around their belly, because I want to move. Like I don't want to get, pardon?
No. I wish I declined. And so many people I talk to all the same. Like they hate the monitor. The monitor sucks. Like I didn't realize.
Don't get it.
Why
yeah.
not? You can just say decline all of them and just have a personal, like just an examination where they just look at.
They just do. There's like a handheld Doppler. So that was what I guess my compromise was, that they could do the handheld check every how often. But, you know, something like that I had to sign off on and say, you know, I'm declining what you recommend, which is that I wear it.
Only just because of the heart condition, like no other woman.
I think so. I think it's because, I think if I was a low risk woman, I could have just declined those things anyway. Okay. But because I was high risk, and there was some funny ones like cord gas sampling, which was a bit random. I'd never heard of it. And then cord gas sampling, just taking like a sample from the umbilical cord, but it means that you can't then get delayed cord clamping, which was something I said I wanted. So there are a few things I was glad we clarified. And like to the hospital, delayed cord clamping was like 2 to 3 minutes, which to me was not delayed cord clamping. Yeah. So anyway, so I signed all this stuff, left, and then I am at my birth story now. And sorry, it's just taken a while, but it's hard to lead up to it.
I think you need to, because like a lot of the time you hear the birth story, but the birth story is not the story.
It's not the story.
Everything that you did in the lead up to your birth that made your birth what it is.
Yeah. Like, and your birth story is like the last chapter.
Missing gap.
Yeah.